Hello. Welcome to Season 8 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is Make the Wives Pick. Since our wives have to watch these movies with us every week, and often complain about it, we made them pick the movies this season. If you want to see the list of upcoming films and follow along, check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for listening. So this week, for the very first episode of Season 8, we watched The Hills Have Eyes, not the original, but the 2006 version. And the reason we watched that is because this season our wives collaborated to create a list of movies that they picked for us to watch because they have to watch them with us anyway, and they complain a lot, and now it's our turn to complain. So I am personally looking forward to tearing this movie apart.
Yeah. Same.
Had you seen this one before?
Yeah. So I actually worked at the movie theater when it came out.
Oh, nice. Had you seen the original?
No, I have not.
Same.
Yeah, I had not, which I feel is probably kind of a shame. But yeah, I own this new one for some reason. But
I feel like the original is kind of iconic. Like it's one that people talk about a lot in horror lists. But I haven't seen it either, so we should fix that next season.
I think so.
But that is for next season. Our responsibility today is to discuss The Hills Have Eyes from 2006. So I'll introduce it, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into it.
Sounds good.
In 2006, Fox Searchlight Pictures brought us The Hills Have Eyes, a remake of a 1977 film with the same name. The remake was directed by Alexander A., who longtime listeners might remember from our episode on the movie High Tension. This movie was produced by Wes Craven, who wrote and directed the original. The Hills Have Eyes tells the story of a road-tripping family who break down in the New Mexico desert and are terrorized by a band of mutants who are the disfigured descendants of miners who were nearby when the government tested nuclear weapons. The film was made on a budget of $15 million and brought in around $70 million at the box office. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video.
Very nice, Daniel. You're so professional at those still.
Just the facts, man.
No, that's not. I do the facts.
Oh, true. Well, you do the fun facts. I do the standard facts, I guess.
You're right.
I do the business facts.
Oh, okay. So this movie was originally inspired by the legend of Alexander Bean. You're well aware of him, I'm sure.
Naturally. But remind the listeners.
Yep. The psychopathic person who was running the Scottish clan like a long time ago. They killed over 1,000 people to feed their inbred brood. Bean and company would set booby traps for travelers and then attack. Eventually, the disappearance grew attention from King James the VI. Is that 5? Yeah, 6. I'll get there. Who would put an end to Bean's reign and massacre his entire family. Although some say the whole thing never happened and was a smear campaign by the British. Many still believe that the Swanee tale. So Alexander Swanee Bean is so supposedly. Yeah, I've read about this actually. It's kind of interesting stuff. They would eat people.
It's like a real twisted variation of Robin Hood.
Yeah. Seems like people were also claiming about fake news a million years ago too.
Yep.
So Yvonne Turchetto, who played Big Mama, not in Big Mama's house, agreed to have her head shaved for $1,000. Which brings up the question, Daniel, how much would it cost for you to shave your head?
Well, I mean, just real talk between you and me, not all that much. but I would try to get more out of the situation.
I negotiate for you.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly where I was headed. Was would you be willing to negotiate? Because if you were doing it, I bet I could get better than 1,000.
Yeah, for sure. I get you probably about 10.
Yeah.
So, Wes Craven, who directed the original, considered the remake after he saw the success of other horror remakes such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Amityville Horror. The search then began for filmmakers to start the project. Basically, what we kind of talked about, the remakes were even a thing back in 2005.
Yes. A big thing in like that time.
Yeah. Coming back too. That's what happened. That's what's happening, as we talked about in our last season 7. Last fact, not really. Second to last fact, this was filmed in Morocco.
What?
This was filmed in Morocco. Is that weird?
Yeah, I would have never guessed.
Yeah. Filmed in Morocco. Kind of interesting stuff. And then the last fact that I have at the beginning of the movie, when it's showing like the deformities, physical deformities in the intro, those are actually from Agent Orange in Vietnam. Not nuclear deformities. But also, they didn't have to show real pictures. You know what I mean? They just made fake ones.
Yeah, but they chose to.
Yeah. Ugh. Those are all my facts.
Very nice. I thought that's funny to me that this was so... They really went out of their way to like introduce this as American historical fiction, kind of.
Yeah.
Like based on events in America, and then those pictures were not from the U.S. and the filming was not done in the U.S. But I did kind of enjoy... Well, I wouldn't say enjoy. In the beginning, it started off with that text about between 1945 and 1962, the U.S. conducted 331 atmospheric nuclear tests. Today, the government still denies the genetic effects caused by the radioactive fallout. That is yet another variation on the based on a true story that we often see at the beginning of horror movies that may or may not have any tie to reality. But it is interesting because it's taking a known thing from history and it's using that to pull you into the believability of what's about to happen in the movie. And so I thought that it was interesting to me to watch this movie now as opposed to thinking about what it would be like to watch this movie in 1977 when, you know, nuclear stuff in general was just much less well known, the science behind it and the potential behind it and everything else. And I do think that in the 70s, it may have been a lot more compelling to think about, you know, maybe this is real. Like maybe this could be happening. Maybe there could be people out there like this. Whereas now, I don't really think it carries quite the same.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was wondering when, I mean, obviously we know this is a remake, but I was wondering like, okay, well, if this was done in, I think the original was like in 1977, not too far off from when they were testing those bombs, it'd probably make a little bit more sense. But if you're doing it in 2006, like, I mean, we know, like, everyone knows about the deformities because since then Chernobyl's happened.
Right, exactly.
And then, you know, look at the Russians now.
Yeah.
It affected all of them.
Yeah.
Bunch of big-headed sons of bitches, man.
Speaking of fake news. But yeah, so this movie, it was interesting just because it felt very much like a 2000s remake to me. I'll get into more of that later. But I did like the opening scene where it's in the New Mexico desert and you see the guys in like the full body suit with the Geiger counters and they get attacked by somebody you can't see. And it's just like a super brutal killing with the pickaxe and like tossing their bodies against the rocks and stuff. Like that was such an in your face, but like keeping that imagery of like the nuclear stuff, but then also of the violence and everything. And then it goes to that opening credit montage of the nuclear tests and the deformed babies and stuff. I felt like that was all really good setup for a horror movie, but then I felt like it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, are the Geiger counters the things that they had in Ghostbusters? Because I didn't know what that was.
The Geiger counter is a thing that measures like radiation.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, and it's probably because I watched this a long time ago, like, I didn't think it was nearly as bad, but I also watched this one after the second movie on our list, so I had a good opener, for, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess a bad opener, which makes it a good one. But, yeah, I think it was interesting with the opening because it starts with you kind of know where it's going, right? Even if you hadn't watched the original, you see the deformities, they set the stage with the nuclear information, and then you see the guys just like getting smoked, and then the family's in Morocco, aka New Mexico, which is able to set the stage. But like, for the record, if there's at any given time I have to hit a dirt road like that as a scenic route, and I see a gas station like that, I'm not following directions from the guy that has 2 teeth that works there. Right.
That has a suitcase full of other people's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that horror movies... One thing that I think is valuable about horror movies is they should really strongly instill in you some things not to do. One is to take directions about an alternate route from a creepy guy at an abandoned gas station in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Like, that just never is going to work out well for you. I mean, you think about, there's this movie, and then there's Texas Chainsaw, and then there's Nothing But Trouble.
Yeah.
And then there's... what was the other? Oh, like kind of Wolf Creek kind of falls into like a similar. Like, there's a bunch of movies that just say, in general, when you're on the road in an unfamiliar area, don't take directions or advice from like hillbilly looking creepers. And I feel like that's just good life advice, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, anytime someone asks me for advice, like if, say, I'm at a gas station or something, I purposely give them the wrong directions to teach them a lesson.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. Maybe that's what they're doing. Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, just don't do it. Be safe out there. This movie, for me, had 3 strikes that all occurred fairly early on, and that's kind of what soured me towards it.
Go on.
Number 1, it had Claire from Lost trying to do an American accent, but also not doing a great job of it.
I don't know who Claire was, but I assume she was the blonde girl, because I noticed, okay.
It was rough. It was coarse, heavy, rough, and I hated it. Strike 2, there was that scene where everyone's sitting around like the dinner table outside the Airstream, and there was a lot of like fake laughing and making jokes that aren't funny, and then like making faces towards the camera. And it was just so cringy to me, and it went on for so long that I was physically uncomfortable while watching it, and not in the way that I want to be uncomfortable during a horror movie. And I felt like that was unnecessary. So I was already like, I'm not sure I'm on board with this. And then came the scene with the brutally murdered dog. I was like, I'm 3 strikes. You're out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I just knew it was happening. Obviously, I've seen it before, but now you got dogs in a horror movie. They gone.
Yep.
You just know it.
Yep.
Although, I thought it was kind of interesting how it went down as far as getting the bad directions. So, like, he was done doing the dirty for him. The next thing you know, he thinks that they saw something, so he sends them to the wrong direction. I thought that was kind of an interesting take, I guess. But I was also thinking, like, how cool would it be to just be able to, like, be in an RV while someone else is driving to something for you, and you could just kind of chill and then wake up, and next thing you know, you're multiple states away.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily have much to do with this movie. However, I did notice the bad accent, and I didn't even know she was British. I just heard, like, one thing she said was like, it was something like okay or something in the car.
There were a few times.
Yeah, I was like, holy. Like, it was like, early on, though. I was like, oh, gotcha. Wow.
Yep.
Interesting. But, yeah, it was kind of weird, like a weird dynamic that they had. Like, where it was almost like
weird, yeah.
It was almost like it was caricatures of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like you were having which I think I'm going to say this a few times throughout this season for the record, but it was almost like you were having a spoof movie, mm-hmm. but without like the jokes.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost felt like a scary movie. You know what I mean? Like
right.
How it's like obviously everything is meant to be kind of over the top and cringy. And it was like that, except not on purpose.
Yeah. Which I think for like a lot of it was for sure like that. Now, but like the initial scene when they get attacked in the Winnebago, like that was pretty, I thought that was pretty good horror stuff though.
Yes. So there were some real good horror scenes.
Because it's Wes Craven.
Well, so I feel like Alexander Aja, I don't know the right way to say it. Anyway, the director of this movie that also directed High Tension, can create really good horror scenes. But the problem with his movies that I've seen so far is that it feels to me like he has good ideas for really scary scenes, but then he's so like into making that scene happen in the movie that it doesn't just get like stitched into the plot very well. And there are just holes around it that if you stop and think about it, it doesn't make sense. And if I saw his movies in a theater, I wonder if I would notice it as much as I do when I'm like sitting at home taking notes to talk about with you. Because then I try to like write something down and I'm like, oh, that actually doesn't make any sense at all. Mm-hmm. And then once you like sort of see it once, you can't like stop seeing them.
Right.
And so for me, like, some of the stuff in this movie was just distractingly illogical. Like the camper explosion. That was a cool scene. But they also used up like all of their resources and shelter to kill one guy. Mm-hmm. You know? Yeah. And like they had a gun. And so it was like this big elaborate trap when if they had just sat on top of the camper holding the gun, none of that would have been necessary.
Yeah.
And then it also really bothered me how so I didn't really catch anyone's name in this movie, but I have nicknames for them. So the guy driving the Airstream is the hard-ass ex-cop.
Right.
So when the hard-ass ex-cop got in the car at the gas station, the gas station owner's car, after he like saw him shoot himself, and he goes, and there's like the giant dude sitting in the back seat, but he just doesn't see him when he looks in the car before he gets in the car.
Yeah.
Like there was nowhere to hide. And he's an ex-cop, like he would notice these things. Also,
you think
how the dog would only attack the mutants when it was convenient to the plot. Like there was the dog that survived, and they were all there. He could have just been wrecking shop that whole time, but he would just disappear for a while and then like come back when it would drive the plot forward.
Yeah.
Okay. And then why was the younger girl mutant all of a sudden willing to completely betray her entire society for some strangers when they'd been killing strangers for like presumably her whole life? Like there was no motivation. There was no really anything, but she was willing to like sacrifice herself for this random family that was presumably family 100 that she had seen come through there. I felt like there were a lot of things that it's like these are individual good scenes, but the way that they're put together or the way that they're executed just loses me, and it takes me out of like that horror zone that a good horror movie tries to keep you in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for some of it, what it's trying to get you to do is think that it's the only family like that out there left, you know, and
sure.
And so then it does it like does the things like blowing up. Now, that's what I was kind of meaning by when I said it's almost like a spoof film, because you got the nerdy guy who becomes the hero. You have going over like in above to make action, for like, blowing up the Winnebago and stuff. But I wondered if it was to set it all up for like the spin at the end where they're getting watched by another set of another clan out there. But yeah, I agree. It's like you got big old gun like that. I feel like anytime you have a gun and like someone's just trying to get in and the door that they're trying to get in at, just go for it, shoot them. But that being said, though, the scene where like they initially attack, though, like the starting at that until after the mom dies, like was super intense, because it was like you have the sister that got attacked. You have the other sister getting attacked and a gun pointed at the baby, like just that tension going. You have the dad dying. So like within like, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, like one sister was raped, one was raped and killed. One dad died and the mom died and the baby was taken. And it's just like, whoa, like what the hell just happened? This is crazy.
And I actually had that sequence down as like probably the best part of the movie in my notes. Like, because when they first come on the bus and the guy turns on the lamp and then you just see him like touching Claire's face while she's asleep. Like that was so terrifying. Creepy. And that was such I have no idea what's about to happen moment. And then it just kept going more and more worst case scenario inside the Airstream. And then all of a sudden the dad is tied to a tree and set on fire and they all go running out. But as they do, she's left with even like less hope of escape from inside the camper. So that whole 10 to 15 minutes, however long of movie time that was I thought like the most intense and most engaging and most completely horrific part of this film, and was like actual good, well executed horror. And then it goes on like the whole search for the kid thing that, I don't know, just kind of loses me, I guess. It was still like, there were still like creepy, horror aspects throughout it, like big head guy, whatever his name, Big Brain, I think was his name. The guy whose head was just kind of hanging off. It's just like, God, that's it's insane. But it's also like, here's the thing though. If, no matter right or wrong, I just want to get this out there. No matter right or wrong, but if you get like a warning, let's bring it down a little bit. Nuclear blast is a big thing, obviously. But like if you get a warning saying like, hey, hurricane's coming. You should get out if you can't. Like if you can, get out. Like you get warnings for those things well in time. With this, it was like they tried to tell us and we refused to leave, and it's like, well, you could have just left and like, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want to leave my house. However, if a nuclear bomb is fixing to happen, I'm gone. I mean, and I think especially too with us growing up in Oklahoma, where we understand what it's like to live in a place where tornadoes can happen with like no warning at all. You get a warning. You hear these scenarios where like you have a warning like for a hurricane or something, and you're like, why would you not all just not be there? It just seems, if you can actually have a chance to get to safety, it's just kind of mind-boggling that people wouldn't take it. The only counterpoint I would make is that in the 50s, people probably knew very little about nuclear blasts or radiation or anything else. And so if you heard, oh, the government says we have to leave because they're testing a bomb like 20 miles away, why would you...
Yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, we have people today that won't wear a mask in a grocery store.
That's true.
When we know that there's a pandemic about. So, anyway. Different topic. Let's go back to something positive. The giant mutant wearing like the suit with the axe was bad ass. I loved that when he came like plowing into that room and was fighting the Democrat son-in-law,
Yeah.
which is my nickname for him. And the way the camera was like super like kind of jumpy and jerky, and just the way they pulled off that fight, I thought was really cool. Some of the stuff in it was silly. I mean, like, it was obviously like a very choreographed fight. I don't think it would have gone down the way that it did in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it was funny because he gets like the Democrat son-in-law gets knocked out, and then he wakes up in that like ice chest with all of the body parts, and then you're like, oh my gosh, he's just gonna suffocate in there. But then he just pushes the lid off, and it's not a big deal. And I had written in my notes that was like continue from last save.
I don't get the reference.
Oh, like in a video game.
Oh,
because like
got
he
you,
died,
got
but
you,
then he
got
just
you.
got
Sorry.
to got to keep doing it. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, what was crazy though was like no one's gonna notice like that sound. Like it's not just like trying to sneak out. Like you were banging on plastic for a minute. Yeah. Yeah, that whole sequence too was pretty. What I thought was kind of cool about it, though, that sequence when like he's, in that ghost town, basically, was that's what you kind of think of when you see like the pictures of the old ghost town, like those old what they staged, like staging houses and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, that's crazy. That's just staying the same,
Yeah, just still out there.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how many people they killed out there.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. I mean, that was kind of my take on this movie in general, is I felt like it was a very 2000s remake where you had not great acting. It was a sort of meant to be like a modern, gritty reimagination. Mm-hmm. Although, on that note, I was surprised that this movie was so bright.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, almost the whole movie was in the daytime with the bright sun, so you could see everything. And I guess it kind of... I guess maybe to be able to, like, fully see the costuming and stuff of the mutants, that made sense. But how much creepier would it have been if he was, like, going through that whole sneaking back into the town trying to get the baby at night, you know?
That's a good point. They probably would have messed up the night vision like recording though, and it would have just been super hard to see or something. But yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing too, being that they're recording in Morocco, it was like 120 during the day.
Yeah, that's miserable.
So they probably, I would just guess, at least 4 people died.
Something I thought was kind of funny was that they were filming, supposed to be in the desert, supposed to be super hot. But every time Claire walked out of the Airstream, she would like cross her arms and hunch her shoulders like she was cold.
Like she's freezing, yeah.
And I feel like that was actually one of the more realistic parts of the movie, because yesterday it was 104 here, and Sarah and her friend went shopping and she bought a hoodie.
That's funny. Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this one was a weird one, man, because you had, like, there's a crazy amount of violence, which it doesn't bother us, whatever. Especially, well, in movies, I guess. A crazy amount of violence, but then, like, it has, like, the hero, which, we kind of have debated over the years of, like, do we want a hero on horror movies, or do we want, and I guess it pertains specifically to the movie, at the end of the day. But
to me, the dog was the real hero in this one, and so I'm all for it.
Yeah, for sure. But he lost his love, man. I feel bad. But anyway, I guess, the son and daughter also lost their mom and stuff. Anyway, it was just strange to, like, the way it was set up was like that. It was like the big hero is coming home, feel good about it.
Yeah.
Like, let's ignore the fact that, like, they killed... I don't know. It was just kind of strange, where it's like, hey, as long as this guy realized that his ways are wrong and it's okay shooting a gun now, we're good.
Yeah,
And I agreed with it. I was like, yeah.
I put this in my notes, and I said I will totally change my opinion on this movie if we find out at the end that the whole trip was just an elaborate, cruel hoax by the hard-ass ex-cop to toughen up his Democratic son-in-law.
That would have been great. That would have been great. Know that he's going to raise that baby right.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this one would not be on my all-timers list.
It wouldn't be on my all-timers list, but it's still not on my worst of all-timers list either. Like, it's just right in the middle. I could watch this again, easily, over 75% of the movies we did 2 seasons ago.
But that's not setting the bar very high. I mean, let's be honest.
No, yeah, that's true. Well, probably, honestly, more than, like, 50% of the movies we've done in... Yeah. Our time, but it's not. I mean, it wasn't like unbearable.
So you did enjoy this more than Under the Skin, just to be clear.
My lowest is Under the Skin, but hey,
there's wait till one you see a ghost story.
There's a couple on the list. I think that will be right there with it. Yeah, but that's for the future reference.
House of Wax. Hot.
Yeah, that's hot. Yeah. But yeah, overall, I could watch this again if I had to. Yet again, I also own it. This was also my wife's pick, and I just wanted to make this clear that I tried to show her this movie when we were dating, just to let her know what I was about. And she had me turn it off right as the rape scene was going on, and refused to finish it, which is understandable, because honestly, I forgot that's how it went down. But so we're watching it, and all she's saying over and over is, why the hell did I pick to do this movie? And I said, you picked it. Like, this is your doing. You know?
What I loved was that both Katie and Sarah had this one on their lists that they made individually before we combined them. And so as we were watching it, Sarah said, credit this one to Katie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Katie would take it.
But that's funny. Anyway, that was The Hills Have Eyes, and we'll be back next week with House of Wax.
See, I got to work on a new ending for this season 8.
Oh, good call, yeah. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. I mean, I think it's fair for everyone to agree that if you had to test nuclear weapons somewhere in the U.S., it should be New Mexico.
Yeah.
So I didn't really empathize with the whole, they were going to blow up this area and we just wouldn't leave our land. Like, really? Really?
Yeah. I mean, my pick would have been Kansas.
Oh, fair. Yeah.
I just assumed it happened, though, already.
Yeah. But we probably eat corn from Kansas. And
right?
Yeah.
That's why I got extra strength.
Yep.